This is the Thriving Dentist Show with Gary Takis, where we help you develop your ideal dental practice, one that provides personal, professional, and financial satisfaction.
Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Dentist Show. I'm Gary Takis, your podcast co-host. We have a very important episode for you today. This episode is titled, What is Hygiene Occupancy and Why is it so important? Well, stay tuned. We're going to get into lots of details around the KPI called Hygiene Occupancy, how to track it, what it is, and how to make it succeed in your practice. But before we do that, I have two announcements to make. About a month after the publication of this episode is our next Thriving Dentist Masterclass. This is coming up on Wednesday, December 6th. And this is a brand new masterclass, never been done before. It's a brand new one. And it's titled Your First 100 Days Plan for 2024 to Develop a Thriving Practice. Now, a masterclass is a 3-hour course done over one evening. This is Wednesday evening, December 6th, where it allows me to go into deep detail about a particular topic. And this particular topic is all about creating your first 100 days plan for 2024. So what you're going to learn is how to be very intentional about your practice in 2024. And you're going to have a complete blueprint to follow to make the most of your first 100 days during the year. The momentum that you're going to start with will set the stage for you having an amazing year. Some of you will know that my undergraduate degree is history. And every presidential administration going back to Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s, has come up with a first 100 days plan, a first 100 days plan. And what that meant is they were going to launch their administration with a very specific plan to let the U.S. population know what they were doing to make the country a better place. Well, I borrowed that 100 days plan concept, and of course, we've adapted it to dentistry. Come join us. You can go to thrivingdentist.com/masterclass. You'll get 3 hours of CE, very inexpensive, less than $90. If you really want to launch 2024 in the strongest way possible, this masterclass is for you. The second announcement that I have is we have a returning guest on our top clinical tips segment. This is Dr. Jared Williams. If you're a regular listener to the Thriving Dentist Show, you've heard from Jared before, and by popular request, we've had him back. And he's going to share with you the secret incision that top GPs use for successful third molar surgery. So if third molar surgery is something you're interested in, and you're interested in some insider tips, you're really going to appreciate this top clinical tip from Dr. Jared Williams. With no further ado, here's Dr. Jared Williams.
Hey, Doc. Are you wanting to improve your skills when it comes to third molar surgery? Let me guess, you're probably not at that level, but you probably want to do some surgical extractions. Well, if that's you, I want to let you know there's only 3 surgical cuts that you need to learn to take out any tooth in the mouth. And I'm going to share one of those in this quick tip. So if that's you, what I want for you to do is this: get a pencil, get a pen, and take notes, because these are the skills that allow me to do over 12,000 cases and have my patients smile at the surgery. And you can too. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, guys, I'm Dr. Jared Williams. I'm the founder of the JW Method, and we train GPs with little to no experience to do third molar surgery with efficiency and ease. And so if you want to learn more about how to take your skills at next level, go to jaredwdds.com. I look forward to seeing you in one of our study clubs. All right, let's jump into it. So most times you're going to come in contact with a case and it's going to look something like this: the tooth in question and the tooth that's going to be left alone. And so what's going to end up happening is you got to understand you have to go all the way back to anatomy. For whatever reason, when we're in dental school, they beat the hell out of us when we're doing our didactic training to the point that once we left dental school, we just wanted to forget about it. Well, I want to let you know, if that's you, you're going to have to brush off your dental anatomy workbooks and crack them open, or you can just watch this video several times to really ingrain it into your mind on the concepts that you're going to learn in order for you to smile after surgery. All right. So with your teeth, there's going to be 4 aspects of it. You have the buccal and the lingual, and then you're going to break it into 4 parts. You have the buccal occlusal, the lingual occlusal, and then just the lingual. And so the reason I want to say that is this: if you follow this principle, you're going to be successful. So after you break the teeth into 4 spots, what you're then going to want to do is this. After elevating, you're going to want to place your surgical burr and go 3/4 away past the central fossa, right? So here's your central fossa. Go 3/4 away. So 1, 2, and then 3, and then stop. Once you get to that point, you have done a phenomenal job. Now, the number one thing that I see GPs struggle with all the time is that when they're doing extraction, they kind of turn into endodontists and they just stay in the pulp chamber. Well, you don't want to do that. Once you've gotten 3/4 of the way from a buccal lingual approach with your burr, then we got to go all the way down and actually cut the furcation. Hence the name, our furcation cut. So once you go 3/4 of the way past the central fossa, then what you're going to do is this: you're going to want to create that furcation cut. What you'll do is this: you're going to get your burr and you want to go all the way down 1 millimeter past the furcation and then stop. And so you're still going to want to have that 3/4 of the way cut and then go all the way down. And when you do that, you're going to take a more complex tooth like a molar and make it into two premolars. And when you do this correctly, you're going to create a nice path of draw where your teeth are just literally going to end up sliding out. And so there you have it. It really is just that simple. So the next time you're going to face your lower third molar, second molar, or even first molar, try out the furcation cut and see how successful you're going to be when you try it. All right, guys. So if you thought that was pretty interesting and you want to learn more about the other 2 cuts that you could take out any tooth in the mouth, what I challenge you to do is this. I challenge you to go to jaredwdds.com and sign up for one of our study clubs. I look forward to sharing with you all the phenomenal aspects of third molar surgery, and as a GP like you could have tremendous amount of success like so many of our other GPs who've gone through the JW method. All right, guys, I'm Dr. Jared Williams, and it was a pleasure sharing this tip with you. And remember, what looks hard is often easy. Make it a great one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Coaching in Action segment. The topic today is, what is hygiene occupancy and why is it so important? What is hygiene occupancy and why is it so important? This is Naren, your co-host. Before we jump into today's Coaching in Action segment, I want to take a minute to thank Dr. Williams. I really enjoyed his tips, the secret cut top GPs use for third molar surgery. So thank you. If you want to watch that video, go to the show notes. You will find that video. Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'm sure all of you will benefit from this video. This is an awesome tip. What is hygiene occupancy and why is it so important? I think this is a great topic, Gary. To be honest, I haven't heard the word hygiene occupancy till you introduced it. So maybe a good place to start is to define what hygiene occupancy is, and then we can talk about why it's important and how to go ahead in optimizing your hygiene occupancy.
Yeah, Naren, this is a very important topic. And the term hygiene occupancy means what percent of your available hygiene appointments end up getting filled at the end of the month. In other words, of the available hygiene appointments you have this month, we measure this monthly, what percent ended up getting filled? Well, Naren, our listeners may be familiar with the term hotel occupancy. Naren, yes. you're probably familiar with the term hotel occupancy. And what that simply means is of the available hotel rooms, how many of them got sold that night? And obviously the higher occupancy they have, the better. So we kind of borrowed that term or adapted the term hotel occupancy to call it hygiene occupancy. Kind of a simple way to think about it, and a very, very important metric. None of the practice management software, the three main software platforms, Dentrix, Eaglesoft, Open Dental, and all the other peripheral practice management systems, none of them measure this, Aaron. The only metric system that I know that measures this is Dental Intelligence. Dental Intelligence measures this. But Dental Intelligence isn't a practice management software. It's a KPI software. So it's brilliant, by the way. If you don't have Dental Intelligence, you should. However, most offices have no idea what their hygiene occupancy is because they can't pull a report from their practice management software. So, quoting one of my all-time favorite authors, Stephen Covey, his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he identified the habits that highly effective people have. And habit number 2, for people that are effective in their lives, they begin with the end in mind. So, Aaron, I'd like to think that all of our listeners would like to be effective. Let's begin with the end in mind. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a hygiene occupancy of 92% or more. 92% or more. Notice that I didn't benchmark it as 100%. And Aaron, why do you think I didn't benchmark it at 100%?
Yeah, I think because it's impossible. And when you set an impossible target, people don't achieve it.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's not, you're exactly right. It's not realistic. And if you set a target that you or your team members feel is unrealistic, it can kind of have a demoralizing effect. It's like, man, try as hard as we can't get there. So we've studied this. We've studied it with data across quite literally thousands of practices. And in our studies, and we look at world-class practices. What do world-class practices have as hygiene occupancy? And the answer is 92% or above. Certainly you can be above 92%. But 92% or above is really, really good. And I'm going to amplify that a little bit and say it's also very challenging. That is not an easy mark to hit. That will require most of our listeners to stretch. In other words, you're going to have to stretch your skills, your protocols, your systems to get to 92%. And if I could frame this even broader, why is the whole topic of hygiene so important? Well, I'm a huge believer in a hygiene-driven practice. The more activity we have in hygiene in your practice, the stronger your practice is. And if we step back and we look at it in service of our patients, this is another reason. If we think about everything we do is how do we better serve our patients? Hygiene occupancy is a very important goal because we know that if we see your patients on a regular basis, if they have healthy gums, if we see them every 6 months, if they're periodontally evolved, we might be seeing them every 3 or 4 months. But if we see your patients on a regular basis, we accomplish 2 things. We keep them as healthy as possible, and we reduce their future dental expenses. Now, how do we reduce our future dental expenses? By catching things at early stage. So we catch things at the early stage, and perhaps we can treat them more conservatively before it becomes something a lot more complicated and in the eyes of the patient, more expensive. So it's really important to get our patients engaged and committed to a regular hygiene schedule. So our goal is, back to hygiene occupancy, 92% or above. Now, I mentioned that none of the software programs track this. So I'm going to suggest a very simple analog way for any of our listeners to start tracking this in their practice. It is analog. As nerdy as I am, this is something that I recommend you do in an analog basis. Certainly you could actually digitize what I'm suggesting. But what I'd like you to do is print out a monthly calendar, a blank monthly calendar. Now, I happen to be an Apple fanboy, so my calendar of choice would be an Apple calendar. Use whatever flavor you like, but a blank calendar for the month. And every workday, I want your hygiene scheduling coordinator to enter a fraction. Every workday, in the space of that day on the calendar, enter a fraction. The denominator, the lower number, is the available hygiene appointments that day. The available hygiene appointments that day. The numerator, the top number in the fraction, would be of those available hygiene appointments, how many were filled. So let's say hypothetically you have 16 available hygiene appointments today. I'm just making up a number to use an example, Naren. If you have 16 available hygiene appointments that day, then the denominator would be 16. And let's say this was a good day and all 16 showed up, or all 16, we somehow ended up filling those spots. Then the numerator is going to be 16 over 16. And that's what we want, ideally. But of course, it may not be that. Maybe 15 over 16, maybe 14. Heck, I hate to admit that this could happen, but let's be realistic. It could be 9 out of 14. Let's hope that isn't the case. But that's how you track that. And then it just becomes an arithmetic equation at the end of the month to look at the available hygiene appointments and compute your percentage, what percent ended up getting filled. And again, that goal is 92% or above. Naren, does that make sense? You're a nerd like me, and you and I tend to gravitate towards technology solutions. But what do you think of my workaround, since we're not getting an easy report from Dentrix, Eaglesoft, Open Dental? What do you think of my workaround?
Yeah, I think it's very practical, Gary, and I know you use it with your clients. So I know it works. So absolutely.
Yes. And now we know, now we know what's actually happened. And it's really important to have data on this, because if you don't have data, if I ask a doctor that isn't tracking this, if I don't have data, how will he or she answer the question? Hey, how are we doing with hygiene occupancy? If they don't have data, Naren, how do you think they'll answer the question?
If you don't have data, they will say, well, I think we are doing well. I think it's a good day. It depends on what happened that particular day. So it's going to be
They'll
very
answer it anecdotally. They'll answer it anecdotally.
Yeah.
And they'll tend, human nature is such where it's recency. We remember the most recent. Maybe yesterday was a really good day in hygiene, and they think, hey, Dr. Araja, how are we doing with hygiene occupancy? Well, Gary, I think we're doing pretty good. Yesterday, man, everybody showed up.
Right.
Or conversely, if yesterday was not good, what is the law of recency going to say? If yesterday was,
it sucks.
Oh man, I think we're horrible. And in reality, neither one of those answers is a long enough perspective to really give you accurate reporting.
Exactly.
So you have to have a way to track this, and our simple analog system is a very easy way to do it. Now, let's pivot in this coaching and action segment and start talking about how in the world do you get to 92%. And that really is the gist of this coaching and action segment. So tip number one is I want you to assign a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator in your practice. If you have multiple admin team members and all of them are working on this schedule, in other words, all of them are working on doctor's schedule and hygiene schedule, then there's no accountability to the hygiene schedule. And, we like to say, although it's a negative phrase, but I think it's important to say it. If everyone's doing it,
no one is doing it.
The corollary? If everyone's doing it, Naren?
No one is doing it.
No one's doing it. So let's dedicate a team member to be a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Now, that team member will likely have many, many, many other tasks to do, of course. However, I would like you to make it crystal clear to that person in your practice that their number one priority is to put butts in the seat in hygiene. Put butts in the seat in hygiene. That appointment time is kind of like a seat on the airplane, Naren. If that seat ends up being empty and the plane takes off to go to its destination, then the airline has forever lost the business opportunity from filling that seat. Well, the same thing happens with that hygiene appointment. If that appointment doesn't get filled, you forever have lost the opportunity for that.
Yeah, I mean the staff member you're paying for, so that's an expense, but you don't have any income coming in for that.
Well, let's look at all the consequences.
Yeah.
You have a very high paid individual sitting around. That would be your hygienist. And of course, we all know what's happening to hygiene wages these days. It's going up geometrically.
Right.
But we also miss the exam opportunity with that patient.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
and again, when it comes back to benchmarking, let's benchmark for just a minute. One of the goals I'd like you to establish, in addition to hygiene occupancy at 92%, is that in a thriving practice, thriving general practice, let me clarify general dentistry, in a thriving general practice, 1/3 of total office production comes from the hygiene department.
Right.
1/3. 1/3. Now, what counts as hygiene production? That's a very important qualifier. What counts? There's different ways to compute that, but a simple way to compute that is to count everything that happens to the hygiene patient counts as hygiene production, with the exception of doctor exams. Doctor exams, of course, should be credited to the doctor. But everything that happens, for example, the assistant might take the x-rays if their x-rays were required. Well, that still counts as hygiene production. If we do some ancillary services like fluoride or sealants, it wouldn't be common to be doing whitening, but if we did whitening, something like that, if we do fluoride trays, whatever we do for that hygiene patient would count as hygiene production. And very often, what do I see, Naren, when we're starting with the client, we go through this data. One of the things that I see is very often this category is underperforming. What we commonly see is, even in very strong practices, the total percent of hygiene production is 20%, 21%, 22%. And even in the teens, 18, 19%. And what that simply means is lots of lost opportunity to develop and build your practice. Lots of lost opportunity. And there is a direct correlation to hygiene, butts on the seats in hygiene, and doctor productivity because of the exams.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to cultivate exams and revisit unscheduled treatment plans every time we see the hygiene patient. So, that all results in a stronger practice. Stronger hygiene equals stronger practice. Now, I know some doctors are going to say, well, Gary, I feel like I'm totally stretched doing exams. I don't know that I could do any more exams. Well, I get it. And I think it's fair to say that even 2 exams an hour are a challenge. They can be done, but it's a challenge. And when we start to if we go to a 3rd exam during the hour for the doctor, that's where the wheels really fall off. So one of the things you might consider, if you're in a situation based on the way your schedule is set that you have to do more than 2 exams an hour, one of the things you might consider is identifying at least 1 patient an hour that doesn't need an exam. Ideally, that would be a periodontal therapy patient that doesn't need an exam. Or it could be a healthy adult that had no unscheduled treatment in a treatment plan. If it was a healthy adult, but they had unscheduled treatment, we want to see the patient so we could talk to them about that unscheduled treatment. And I'm not going to suggest that can be done 100% of the time, but if you start to run that filter through, you might see the opportunity to significantly reduce the number of times during the day where you have to do 3 exams an hour. And I'll give up the hygiene exam fee every day to create more sanity for the doctor on the doctor's schedule. Does that make sense, Darren?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go back to what do we do to get to 92%? First of all, have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Secondly, now that you have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator, set up your practice so that person can excuse themselves from the hubbub of the front desk when needed to focus on filling the hygiene schedule. So set that up somehow in your practice so that that individual can go to a workstation away from the hubbub of the front. And what do I mean by hubbub, Naren? Checking people in, checking them out, and answering the phones. Because if the hygiene scheduling coordinator has done everything she possibly can to fill the hygiene schedule and it doesn't work out, I'm actually okay with that. But if instead she said, well, I haven't had a chance to work on it because I've been so slammed by the phones, then I'm not okay with that, Naren, because it means that we're not set up to allow her to prioritize filling that hygiene schedule. And, I'll share a solution that we have in one of our client offices is the assistants are cross-trained to do some front desk activity. And so before the hygiene schedule coordinator checks herself off the front desk, she grabs an assistant that can fill that seat so that she can put her head down and work on that hygiene schedule. Very, very important detail. If you don't solve that detail, I can assure you because I've seen it happen so many times, that your hygiene schedule coordinator is going to say, the phones were ringing off the hook. We had patients with many questions at checkout, and I didn't have a chance to work on it. And that's going to come back and haunt you because you haven't set up a system to be able to handle that. The third detail that I have to get to 92% or more is a very tactical detail that I'd like you all to start doing tomorrow. And that is train your patients, train them that you expect them to keep their hygiene appointments. You expect them to keep their hygiene appointments. Now, how do we do that? At the end of sometime near the end of the new patient appointment, I want one of your business team members to sit down with the new patient, preferably in a consult room, and say something like this: Naren, I'm so glad you've chosen our office for your dental care. We're going to work really hard to take great care of you and make every visit a positive experience. May I take a minute now and explain 4 specific things you can expect from us as an active patient in our practice? And I nod my head. That's a part of neuro-linguistic programming. If I nod my head up and down, the patient's going to nod their head and say, sure. And then I'm going to say, here's the 4 things you can expect as an active patient. Number 1, we're going to treat you like a family member. I know that sounds kind of odd, but we think of our patients as our patient family. Number 2, because of that, we're going to use the highest quality materials, the latest advances, the latest equipment, the latest technology, because that's what we would want as a patient. Number 3, we stand behind our work. Naren, if anything isn't right, doesn't meet our standards, we redo it until it does. By the way, we have a written warranty, and if any treatment is recommended, I'll share that warranty with you. And number 4, we have a protocol for you to reach the doctors, in our case, it's doctors after hours, and I hand them a business card that has that protocol to reach the doctors after hours. So if you're ever experiencing an emergency, or Naren, if anyone in your family is experiencing an emergency, you can reach our doctors after hours. Now, if it's routine, just call the office and leave a message. But I want you to know you can reach the doctors if it's urgent and if it's a dental concern. Hey, Naren, now that I've shared the 4 things you can expect from us, can I take a minute and explain what we expect from you?
Absolutely.
I'm doing a neuro-linguistic program. I'm nodding my head. And what's the patient going to do?
Do the same.
Yes. Well, it's just one thing, Naren. We expect that if you make an appointment, you show up. Now I back off that. Now, Naren. We are all family people here, and we understand how, sometimes we get thrown curveballs. Sometimes stuff happens. In fact, Naren, I saw a bumper sticker the other day on a car that says stuff happens. Well, the first word wasn't stuff, but it did start with an S, but it wasn't stuff. Well, we do understand that stuff happens. And when it does, all we ask is you kindly give us at least 48 hours advance notice if you need to change an appointment. Naren, does that sound fair to you?
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to say yes. And it was a little bit light, a little bit playful. I like using that bumper sticker. Everyone knows what bumper sticker I'm talking about. And it's kind of light, kind of playful, and everyone says yes. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have cancellation no-shows. However, it radically reduces it. Dr. Phil, the noted TV psychologist personality, has said we train people how to treat us. And I believe that. And the reason why many offices have such a problem with cancellation no-shows, they've trained their patients that it's okay to have cancellations and no-shows. It's okay to not show up. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to reset that in that initial conversation. Now, it will not work 100% of the time, but I'm amazed at how effective it is. For our good patients, Naren, we have a sequence of reminder messages that go to the patient that's 7 days, 3 days, 2 days in advance. As you and I are recording this, it's a Thursday as we're recording this. So today, reminders are going out for patients next Thursday, the first reminder for their hygiene appointment next Thursday. Well, there will be people that call today and say to Carly, I got your message, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm out of town next week, and I don't know why I made that appointment. And I know I had to give you at least 48 hours notice, so I need to call and reschedule that appointment. And they'll say that, I know I have to give you at least 48 hours notice. So they're acknowledging, and here, notice how far in advance they're doing that, Naren. A week out.
Because they got the reminder.
Yeah. Do you think Carly's going to have any trouble filling a hygiene appointment with a week advance notice?
No.
Do you think she has any trouble filling it with 2 days advance notice?
No.
No. Well, there you go. What is hygiene occupancy? Hygiene occupancy is what percent of the available hygiene appointments that end up getting filled, tracked on a monthly basis. Why is it so important? Man, it's a third of your practice. It's all about helping our patients enjoy better oral health. It's truly a practice builder to have 92% or above hygiene occupancy. Naren, I know we've got some great questions coming up. Let's hit pause on the coaching and action segment and dive a little bit deeper into this topic by answering some of our listener questions.
Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Q&A segment. The topic again is, what is hygiene occupancy and why is it so important? I have 5 questions for you, Gary. The first one is there a formula for determining when to add more hygiene days in my practice?
Oh, that's such a great question, Naren. I am so grateful we got that question. In my coaching work, I often see that somehow a practice has plateaued with their number of hygiene days, and they've never grown past that. Maybe they have a full-time hygienist. I'm just using an example here. Maybe they have a full-time hygienist working 4 days a week, and they have a second hygienist that work 2 days a week. So collectively, 4 plus 2, they have 6 hygiene days a week. But then I look back historically in the practice, and 10 years ago, they had 6 hygiene days a week. What's wrong with this equation, Naren?
They're not adding enough hygiene days. I mean, if the practice is growing,
yeah,
hygiene also should grow, right? I mean, if your math is 33% of the revenues should come from hygiene, and your practice is twice the size, your hygiene should be twice the size too.
Yeah, but somehow it just got static. And what that means is you've got the back door wide open. Patients are coming into your practice, and they're putting themselves on their own hygiene recall system. They're coming in every 3 years, whether they need it or not, every 4 years. And it's time to really change that. So how do you know? There needs to be a healthy tension between supply and demand in hygiene. You want a little bit more demand than you have in supply, a little bit more demand. And what I mean by that is you want to have a little bit of tension there where there's more demand than you have supply, because if we do get cancellation notice and no-shows, we can build a short notice list, and we can often fill not so much the no-show. No-shows are hard to fill there in hygiene because by the time the patient didn't show up,
it's too late.
It's too late. Do we have time to reach out to someone they can get to the office? It's difficult. But if they'll give us some advance notice, and it happens in every practice, someone will call, it'll be 9 a.m, and they'll call, Carly, I am so sorry about this, but I just got called into an emergency meeting. It's going to happen later this morning, and I can't make my 11 a.m. hygiene appointment. I know I'm supposed to give you 48 hours, but I can't make it. And now we've got 2 hours. If that happened at 9 a.m., we got 2 hours. And if there's a little bit of a tension between your supply and demand, you've got a little bit more demand, we have a call list of people who would like to be seen sooner. And we can move those people into that appointment time. So what I have found is that first of all, the first thing we want to do is consistently achieve 92% hygiene occupancy. That's the first thing we want to achieve.
Right.
So if you're below that, then don't add hygiene because don't add more hygiene days or add another hygienist, because that percentage, that hygiene occupancy is going to go down. So the first thing we want to do is be consistently achieving that 92%. As it starts to go beyond that, then you really have to take a look at adding hygiene, because it's great to be at 95%, but that likely means that you could add more hygiene days and still be at 92%. There's actually a quick math formula. Every practice management software, the main ones, Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, you can pull a report that defines active patients in your practice. Now, in order for that report to be valid, you have to put in a date range of what you consider to be an active patient. And my definition is anybody that's had an appointment in the last 18 months. is defined as active. Now, there are some people that think, no, that's too loose, Gary. You should make it every 12 months. Well, I think that's a little bit too tight. There are others that'll go the other way and say, no, I think it should be able to have an appointment that lasts 24 months. I think that's too loose. So I think the 18 months is a nice happy medium. So you can simply run that report and multiply by 0.85, 85%. What's the 85%? What is that figure? That's our hygiene recare percentage. That means what percent of our active patients do we actively have engaged in recare? I would love to say it should be 100%, but again, the reason why it's not 100% is it's not realistic. But 85% is realistic. So if you take that number, let's say you have 2,000 active patients, you multiply it by 0.85, that would be 1,700. And depending on how your hygiene schedule goes, you can divide that by the number of hygiene patients you see, and you can simply do the math to determine how much demand you have. And so it becomes a math equation.
So are you doing 1,700 times 2 because 2 appointments a year?
Well, correct. There's 2 appointments a year. Remember, we're going to see, again, there's a faulty assumption here. The faulty assumption is that everybody's healthy. We know that there's some periodontially involved people too. But if you just want to be conservative on the math, say twice a year.
Yeah.
And then simply divide that, by the number of hygiene days, how many patients you see a day. I'm going to be a little controversial here, Naren. I like the idea of a 1-hour hygiene appointment for an adult patient. 1-hour hygiene patient. I know there's others that I don't need an hour. I can make it. I could, shorten it and cram more people in there. I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is that I would like time for the hygienist to go over home care with the patient. I'd like the hygienist to revisit any unscheduled treatment plans. I would like to continue to develop rapport and relationship with patient, not just have the patient feel like they're on a treadmill. So if it's an 8-hour day, the typical, we're seeing 8 adults, she's going to see 8 patients that day. Now, I know there's others that may feel differently. That's why you can adapt this to your practice, but you can just figure all this out mathematically and figure out when you need data. So instead of just seat of the pants, well, I think I'm at another day. You can actually figure it out mathematically. Great question.
Thank you, Gary. Yes. Let me ask you question number 2. I suspect that I'm not alone in this problem, but we have an unacceptable rate of hygiene cancellations and no-shows. How can I turn this around?
Great question. So first thing I would do is start that conversation at the end of your new patient visits, the one we talked about in the coaching and action segment. And notice the science behind that. There's actually a psychological science behind that. I gave the patient 4 benefits. And I would think they're benefits that they appreciate. We're going to treat them like a family member. We're going to use the absolute most up-to-date way to take care of them. We stand behind our work, and they have a way to reach the doctor or doctors after hours if needed. I think the public would appreciate each and every one of those. Would you agree, Naren?
Yes.
Yeah. And how many things did I ask for in return?
1. Give me a 48-hour
right?
notice if you can't make it. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I gave you 4 things. I only asked for 1 thing in return.
Yes.
Start there. Second thing I would do is I would politely suggest and guess you probably don't have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. That's another change I would make immediately in your practice. Have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Because and let that individual know that is the number 1 job priority. Even language like this, Naren. Let's say her name is Susan. Susan, we're going to do an annual review with you, just like we do with all of our team members, and we're going to look at a lot of different things regarding your performance. But the number 1 thing we're going to look at is your hygiene occupancy rate. And if you're at 92% or above, you are going to get an A on your report card. You're going to be a great review. And if not, then, we need to talk about how to solve that. And I want to be really clear about this, that if you do everything else well, but fail at hygiene occupancy, that's not going to be a good review. And help them understand how clear, be so clear about it. And then ask the question, Susan, tell me what you just heard. Ask for some feedback. What did you just hear? And there's a great way to find out if they understand. Hopefully they say something like, well, if I'd like to keep this job, which for the record I would, I'm going to do really good at hygiene occupancy. Yeah, you got it. You got it. So there's where I would start. And just by tracking it, things that are measured improve. So print out one of those calendars and start that. Bill Bowerman, the late legendary track coach at University of Oregon, said things that are measured improve. And the corollary to that, he said, and when you report your data back, improvement happens geometrically. He found that with his track and field athletes. Things that are measured improve. And when you report it to them, report it back to them, let them know. So it's not just sitting on some scoreboard somewhere, but they know, then the improvement can be geometric. I believe that with every ounce of my DNA.
Thank you, Gary. Let me ask you the next question, question number 3. Do you recommend using block scheduling for scaling and route planning appointments in the hygiene schedule?
Oh, really good question. So one of the problems that happens in getting serious about diagnosing and treating perio. So let's say hypothetically, we decide that we've got to, recalibrate our hygiene department and get serious about diagnosing and treating perio. That's an episode all onto itself. But now we're getting serious. We're not going to do bloody prophies. We're now going to let people know that they've got an infection in their gums and there's ways that we can help them. But depending on how you schedule SRPs, a scale and a route planning, now we get serious about it, but then we go to schedule the patient and we have no availability for that. In other words, it's time to get serious about this, but you look at the schedule and the first available longer appointment to do SRPs is 3 months out. What have we just done in motivation for the patient? We've just taken a wet blanket and thrown a wet blanket on it, haven't we? Imagine that, Darren. That's really what we've done. Yes, I think you should go out in your schedule and depends on how you schedule that. How long do you schedule? In the perfect world, I have a little bit of background, actually a fairly significant background in microbiology. And in the ideal world, the microbiologists would tell us that ideally we do all 4 quads in one appointment. However, that really isn't very practical for a lot of reasons. It's not practical for some people can't get anesthetic in all 4 quads. In some case, the buildup's so great that we would be, it'd be a difficult appointment for our hygienist. A lot of times patients can't give us that much time to put on the schedule. So in most cases, we're doing half mouth. We do half mouth on the first appointment, second half mouth on the second appointment. And that's an acceptable protocol. That's an acceptable compromise. And if you do half mouth, then you have to make sure you see the patient for the second hygiene appointment no longer than 10 days out. Because if it's longer than 10 days, the pathogenic bacteria will just recolonize. And then all the great work you've done in the first quadrant it goes back to, ground zero again. So you really need to see that patient within a week. So we have to have some blocks available. So play around with some blocks. Doctor, the best way I would suggest doing this, we actually have a really good template for that. But the best thing I would do is, doctor, sit down with your hygienist or hygienist and talk about putting some blocks in for SRPs based on what you think your anticipated demand is as you get serious about it. And remember, put them in there. And if they don't fill for whatever reason, which if you're serious about it, I think you're going to fill them. But if not, then have a release set up 2 days in advance. And your hygiene scheduling coordinator can release it and just schedule regular hygiene in that time, but give 2 days to fill it instead of doing it at the last minute. So that's what I would do. Sit down with your hygienist, start to put some blocks out in the schedule, start to play around with it to see what your demand is. But you want to have an answer for that second appointment. You want to make sure we can see them for that second appointment no more than 10 days out. Otherwise, you're going to be going backwards on the microbiology of periodontal disease.
Thank you, Gary. Let me ask you the question number 4. Is there a way to market my practice to attract patients who are more likely to keep their hygiene appointments?
Well, absolutely. I believe that. A lot of times, if the only way a practice has to attract patients is they're a participating provider of a PPO plan, And the way they market their practice is they're being listed on the Delta Dental website, on the MetLife website, on the United Concordia website. And Naren, in that case, typically, how does their dental insurance cover their hygiene appointments? How does that work, Naren? Typically,
Dental insurance, will you're talking about does the insurance cover the hygiene appointment?
Yeah. How does the insurance cover that? The routine adult hygiene appointment. They cover it at 100%.
Yes, they do.
So it's free.
Yes.
It's free.
Yes.
How do people value free stuff?
They don't value it. That's why they don't show up.
They don't value it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think therein lies much of the problem.
Right.
I mean, is it possible that you can get a good patient from Delta, from MetLife, from United Concordia that's faithful about their hygiene appointments? Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. But many of them have an insurance mindset. They're only interested in having something done that's covered by insurance. And the way they think about their hygiene appointment is, well, it's free.
Yeah.
It's free.
No harm, no foul. I don't show up. Who cares? I don't even pay.
Oh, by the way, I can go to another office that's on my PPO plan if I need to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
So what would you do, Naren?
Yeah, I would, get rid of the dependence on insurance, PPO plans for two reasons. One, many doctors are reporting to us that they're actually losing money on PPO insurance coverage. In other words, they're spending more than what they get reimbursed.
Yeah, that's happening in very, very much right now in areas of the country where the hygiene wages have escalated radically, which is much of the country. If you ever look at this very closely, you might discover, doctor, you're not even getting enough reimbursement from that PPO plan to pay the hygienist hourly rate, let alone all the other related expenses, let alone, the room costs, the equipment costs, the supply costs, the admin cost to put a butt in the seat. And it's actually costing you money to provide hygiene, right, which I don't think any business makes any sense. If providing a product or service costs you money, that doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. And that also reduces the motivation, right? Because the doctor is anyways losing money. So he's like, oh, patient doesn't show up, I'm still losing money. So I think that's the number one thing. So fix that issue, don't lose money. And the second reason to do this is you want people who appreciate you. So, attract patients who are not coming to you because they are on the PPO plan. How do you do that? Through Google. You rank on Google for the things they want, whether it's, veneers, crowns, sedation, maybe they have some periodontal disease. Maybe that's what they're Googling. Whatever that they are looking for, attract them for that, convince them that you're really good at what you do for that thing they're looking for. And then you have a lifelong patients who pays cash, values you, and shows up.
Yeah, and Naren, I'll brag on the work that you and your team do. Naren's the founder and CEO of Equa Digital Marketing. It's a marketing agency that works with dentists. We have been a client at Life Smiles for 7 years now, and absolutely thrilled with the results. If any of you would like to learn more about that, Naren's been kind enough to allow you to schedule a marketing strategy meeting so that you can learn about how Equa can help you replace Delta as a source of patients with Google as a source of patients. Go to www.equa.com/MSM. MSM stands for Marketing Strategy Meeting. Highly recommend that you schedule that and you start to pivot from having insurance companies provide you with patients to having Google supply you with patients. Well, as we come to the finish line today, I want to come back and kind of circle back about why hygiene occupancy is so important. It's a third of your practice, doctor. And let's also focus on the patients. It helps our patients be healthier and more engaged in our practice, take a greater interest in their oral health. There's lots of great reasons why getting serious about hygiene occupancy at 92% or above is so important in your practice. I want to say thanks to you, Naren, for co-hosting this episode, and thanks for the great work that you and your team do at Equa, not only for Life Smiles, but for dentists all over the country. If you haven't scheduled that marketing strategy meeting, take advantage of that. That was the best marketing meeting I've ever had, and that happened over 7 years ago for Life Smiles. I've been recommending them to our clients, especially those that are reducing their insurance dependence, because it's so important to have a source of have a consistent source of new patients in your practice. If that's something that you'd like to figure out, I think Equa could be a great partner with you. Also want to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I do have a request. If you haven't done so already, click the subscribe button on the Thriving Dentist Show. It's free, wherever you get your podcasts, click subscribe. That simply means that every Wednesday when we upload a new show, it'll be automatically uploaded for your listening convenience. On that note, thank you for the privilege of your time, and we look forward to connecting with you on the next Thriving Dentist Show.